Hey, my name is Mike. I'm an engineer here at Readyset, and today we're going to be going over the process of deploying a Readyset cluster into your own dedicated VPC on Readyset Cloud. So there are really three main steps to being able to do this. The main idea here, though, is that we are going to create a dedicated VPC and IAM role in your AWS account that is going to be used to deploy the cluster. So the very first step is that we want to obviously log into Readyset Cloud. Once we're logged into Readyset Cloud, what we want to do is we want to actually come over to the organization settings. We're going to go over to settings. And now we're going to go over to this roles tab. And here it's going to tell us to add a role. So once you get to this screen, it's going to provide you with an automatic setup script. You want to select the region that your upstream database is already deployed in, because this is where the Readyset cluster gets created. And then you want to click Get Script. So now this script will essentially be responsible for creating the VPC, creating the necessary subnets, route tables, and security groups for that VPC so that it can connect to Readyset and so that your upstream can connect to it. And then creating an IAM role and granting permission for Readyset Cloud to assume that role to deploy to your newly created VPC. So what you want to do is you want to basically just copy this script, and then you want to run this in an environment that has admin privileges to your AWS account. One of the fastest ways to just run a script inside of your AWS environment would just be through Cloud Shell. So as you can see here, I'm logged into my AWS account. And if I just search for Cloud Shell and then I open it up, once we get into Cloud Shell, we want to create that script. So we already have the content copied into the clipboard. So I'm just going to say nano create readyset vpc.sh. And then in here, we're just going to paste that script content. I'm going to quit out. And once the script has been created, all we need to do is just run the script. So again, the script will just prompt you to make sure that you know that it's going to create a VPC, which you can then delete. It's also going to create an IAM role, which you can also delete as well at any time. So we're just going to tell it yes. So now the script is executed successfully. The role and the VPC have been created, and we see that a new VPC with this ID has been generated. And when we come back to Readyset Cloud, if we go back to the roles tab, we'll see that a new role has been created. And this is the VPC that we're going to select as we deploy our Readyset cluster. So now if you've been following along with the BYO VPC docs, along with this video, all the steps that we've done so far really just encapsulate this first step here to create the dedicated VPC and role in your account. Now, the second step here is to set up VPC peering between the Readyset cluster VPC, this is the one that we just created, and your upstream database VPC. We assume that if we're deploying against your production upstream database, that it is behind a private VPC that can't be accessed publicly. So in order for Readyset to communicate with that upstream database, it needs to be peered. So we're not going to go over VPC peering explicitly in this video, but there's basically 4 steps. One is to initiate the peering request between the VPCs and then accept the peering request. Then you have to add the peering routes to the respective VPC route tables. Then, depending on if it's MySQL or if it's Postgres, you have to open up ingress on 5432 or 3306. So that Readyset can connect to your upstream. And then you have to open up ingress on this newly created Readyset VPC on 5433 or 3307, because this is how your application is going to connect to Readyset. So we're also assuming here that your application is deployed into the same VPC as your upstream. If it's not, then you'll also need to peer between Readyset and your application as well. So now the final step here is to specify external VPC during Readyset cluster creation. So if we come back over to Readyset Cloud and we create a cache, we're going to use our own database. We're going to specify the region that we created that VPC in. I'm going to just call this BYO VPC. I'm going to then select a dedicated VPC. And now that the role has been verified from before and the VPC has been verified, we can see that this is selectable here. So we're basically saying, I want to deploy this Readyset cluster into this AWS account, into this VPC. So we're going to just select this VPC. Now we're going to fill out our host and our port and our database name as usual. And once we're ready, we're going to just create cluster. So after some time, your cluster will come up and report back as healthy as long as Readyset can connect to your upstream database. So if you had completed those peering steps prior to this, or if you happen to be using a public database connection, Readyset will be able to connect to your cluster. However, just keep in mind that the cluster URL that we deploy is always behind an internal load balancer, which means that any application that's going to connect to Readyset must be peered with it. Anyway, that concludes all the steps to deploy a Readyset cluster into your own VPC. If you have any other questions or concerns, or you're having any issues, please feel free to contact us either through our community Slack, sending us a direct message, or if you'd like this to be demoed for you, you can schedule a demo. Thank you.